but we're all praying for the best outcome, so we will do that. I want to thank everyone for being here with us today to discuss this important topic that is personal to a lot of people. I was given the task, I was given a bunch of jobs today, but one of them was to introduce the vice president, and something happened where I was found somebody who was a little bit more qualified than me to do it. So I want to call up Hannah, who's going to join me for doing this. During the campaign, when I was able to spend a lot of time with the vice president, this was one of the first issues that we spent a lot of time talking about, and what he's done in the state of Indiana really was remarkable and was a model for a lot of other states that are also doing great work. So I'm very pleased that the vice president's going to join us today to discuss some of those issues, but I'm going to leave it to Hannah, who's the real star today. So.
Good morning. Thank you. It's an honor to be here today with all of you. Words cannot describe how grateful I am to see everyone here talking about a topic that is so close to my heart. I used to have a dream that I was with my dad, but we were surrounded by metal fences and metal tables. It wasn't until I was 9 that my mom told me that my dad had gone to prison and that it wasn't a dream, it was a childhood memory. It turns out I'm not the only one with memories of having to visit a mom or a dad in prison. There are 10 million other kids in America who have had the same memory. All these kids want is to come home from school, eat a snack, and talk about their day, to have a mom or a dad at their ball game, or to hear them read a bedtime story and get a goodnight kiss. Incarceration has many negative impacts for children and families, and it often kicks off a vicious cycle. Children who grew up with parents behind bars are 6 times more likely to be incarcerated as adults. Children whose parents suffer from addiction are 8 times more likely to become addicted when they're adults. You're also much more likely to grow up in poverty. It makes you wonder, how can we break this cycle? As a kid, it is all very confusing to watch grown-ups fight over politics instead of helping people and solving these problems. And that is exactly why it is so meaningful that we are all here today to focus on the solutions, so we can break these cycles. People can get the help they need, and kids can be reunited with their moms and dads. To continue this conversation, it is my honor to introduce to the stage the Vice President of the United States, Mike Pence.
Well, thank you, Hannah, for that amazing, amazing introduction, and for your courage and your bravery, and for being such an extraordinary voice for positive change in America. We're proud of you. We really are. I was deeply moved, as I know you all were, by Hannah's reflections and the courage she and her mother have shown, and their willingness to lend their voice and their experience to this enormously important national debate. Before I begin, allow me to address the shooting that took place this morning in Santa Fe High School, Texas. The President and I have been briefed. We'll continue to monitor the situation, and we will make all federal resources available to first responders and school officials in the wake of this incident. But we say to the students, the families, the teachers of Santa Fe High School, and all of those affected in the entire community, we're with you. You are in our prayers, and I know you are in the prayers of the American people. To members of the Cabinet, Governor Fallin, Governor Martinez, members of Congress, to all the state leaders gathered here, to all those working with faith and compassion and conviction all across this country, it is my great honor to join you here today at this first ever Prison Reform Summit at the White House. And let me take a moment specifically also to thank Jared Kushner for all you've done to advance this issue in this administration and across the country. Jared, you've shined a national spotlight on prison reform as never before. You've brought together people from across the political spectrum. Because of your tireless work and inspiring commitment, I'm confident this will be the White House that reforms the American prison system for the betterment of all the American people. Would you join me in thanking Jared Kushner for his great compassion and his great work on this issue? As you'll hear from President Trump in just a few minutes, prison reform is a national priority for the Trump administration. The president made this clear in his State of the Union address when he said that we are fully committed, in his words, to help former inmates who've served their time to get a second chance. During this National Police Week and every week, we will always stand with the men and women of law enforcement as they work to keep our streets and cities safe. But we also stand for the principle that once you've served your time and paid your debt to society, you deserve a chance to make a difference in your life and in the life of this nation. Good. The president's already taken action on this issue. Earlier this year, he brought prison reform experts and governors to the White House to listen to their thoughts and discuss proposals and successes at the state level. In March, the president signed an executive order, as all of you know, to establish the Federal Interagency Council on Crime Prevention and Improving Reentry, which brings together leaders in our cabinet across the administration to craft recommendations for prison reform. And the president also declared April Second Chance Month to, in his words, celebrate those who have exited the prison system and successfully reentered society and encourage expanded opportunities for those who have worked to overcome bad decisions earlier in life and are willing to work hard to turn their lives around. By failing to offer effective pathways to personal reform, the truth is our current prison system too often misses an opportunity to help people lead productive and fulfilling lives once they walk through the prison gates and return to their communities. This makes our nation less safe. It drains the public resources, and it too often ruins too many lives. The statistics are really astounding. You just heard Hannah recite some of them. But the statistics that are most heartbreaking to millions of Americans are that every year, while 650,000 people leave America's prisons, within 3 years, 2/3 of them are arrested again. More than half will be convicted. 40% will find themselves back where they started, behind bars. It is a cycle of criminality. It is a cycle of failure. This is truly a crisis. It's also a crisis of public safety. It's driven by poor choices, let's be clear. But I believe, as the president does, that it's also compounded by a lack of opportunity. We will continue to support law enforcement and hold accountable those who break the law. Make no mistake about it. But we will also recognize that too many ex-offenders feel that they have nowhere else to turn but back to a life of crime once they leave our prison system. Recognizing this is why our administration is working tirelessly to identify and promote the reforms that will give current prisoners the training and the skills they need to choose and chart a path of self-sufficiency and success. We're looking for programs that are grounded in evidence, proven to work. And as the experts in the room here know, there's a remarkable range of possibilities in that category. They include programs that address mental health and drug addiction, as well as those that provide job training and mentorship. Some are run by government agencies, while others are organized by community groups, by nonprofit organizations, and faith-based organizations. President Trump has already called on federal, state, and local prison systems to move forward with the best reforms, whatever they may be and whatever the source, public or private or faith-based. Our administration has been inspired by states like Kentucky and Kansas that have already shown how reform can improve public safety and prisoners' lives. And we'll continue to work with leaders in both political parties in the Congress, the House, and the Senate to advance prison reforms that will make our country safer by offering better choices to those behind bars and to former offenders. As I close, and Jared reflected on this a moment ago, let me just say that prison reform matters deeply to millions of Americans, and even in my little family and my life experience, I've seen the impact that prison reform can have. It's about public safety, first and foremost. It's about stopping repeat offenders and getting crime off our streets. It's about fiscal responsibility and saving taxpayer dollars that are currently spent on a prison system that costs too much and delivers too little. But above all else, as I've seen firsthand, prison reform is about changing lives and changing communities, about people who made mistakes, who atoned for them, learned from them, who got a second chance and a shot at a better life. A few years ago, when I was governor of Indiana, I saw the difference prison reform can make. It was at a Branchville Correctional Facility in southern Indiana, where, as we speak, a majority of the inmates at Branchville Correctional participate in either faith-based or character-based programs every single day, and it's making a difference in their lives. Working with local churches, I witnessed the extraordinary impact that these ministries were having in the lives of these offenders. And with a combination of workforce training in the same facility, we were not only creating the tools for their hearts to change, but we were giving them the ability to re-enter communities and have the kind of relationships in the communities that created pathways for gainful employment. I mean, truthfully, it was remarkable to watch. The symmetry, the relationships that would be built through these programs, through volunteers coming alongside offenders, pouring themselves into the lives of these offenders, building relationships, and as the offenders developed new skills and new abilities, then they would leave the Branchville Correctional Facility, re-enter the community, oftentimes Evansville, Indiana, and it was those very relationships that would open doors for gainful employment and a fresh start in life. I mean, I witnessed in our prisons what I've known throughout my life. Changed hearts mean changed lives. I also saw the impact of faith and mentorship at the Plainfield Correctional Facility, where we established a first-time offender program in the state of Indiana. Many of the mentors and volunteers in that program were ex-offenders who had turned over a new leaf after they have put their faith in God. They're now answering the call to ministry to men and women caught up in a life of crime, oftentimes in the very same facility where they spent time. You know, these changed lives inspire the nation. But these programs are making a difference in the lives of individuals and in communities every single day. The truth is, these programs are making America safer by opening doors to second chances to tens of thousands of those who made wrong choices earlier in life. And I can assure you, we are determined in this administration with President Trump's leadership to seek ways to expand these opportunities to more offenders to the benefit of the nation. That's what President Trump and our entire administration are committed to do, and I hope today's summit gives evidence to that. With all of your help, with the continued creative leadership of the great governors who are gathered here today and other state officials, with the extraordinary compassion and faith and innovation of those of you who've poured yourselves into the lives of offenders across this country and facilities across this country, with bipartisan support in the Congress and with the strong leadership of President Donald Trump. I know we will open pathways to second chances for more Americans, and we will make America safer than ever before. Thank you for the opportunity to address you today. Thank you for your involvement in this vital issue in the life of the nation. God bless you all.
Ladies and gentlemen, Secretary Rick Perry, Brooke Rollins, Van Jones, Jared Kushner, Topeka Sam, and Jessica Jackson Sloan.
It's an honor to be here. I want to say a couple things right up front. I am not here in my role as a journalist. If I were a journalist, I'd have to ask a whole bunch of questions about a whole bunch of topics. I'm here as a father of 2 little boys that are going to have to grow up in this country. I'm here as a concerned citizen, and I'm here as the president of the Dream Corps. We work on criminal justice. I've been working on it for 30 years. We have a short period of time to talk, and we have some of the best brains in the country to talk about one of the most important issues, which is prison reform. I want to start with you, Jared. You have stepped out on this issue in a way that has been surprising, inspirational. What are you doing, and why are you doing it?
So thank you, Van. And first of all, thank you for being here and for all of your advocacy and leadership on this issue. It's been great working together on it, and without your help, we wouldn't have been able to make the progress that we have, so thank you. I also want to thank a lot of the people in this room who really have been some of the great advocates for the work from around the country. I really am inspired by all of the work that you do, and you are making big difference for a lot of people, a lot of families, as Hannah so eloquently laid out earlier. And what I'm finding is that you've given a lot of hope to the people who say that we can't change the recidivism rates, we can't change this. I see in all of your programs and all the work you do that we really can make a big difference, and we are committed to doing it. So thank you to all of you today. To Van's question, and I will be quick, so I know we have a short time. This was not an issue that was part of the campaign, and one of the reasons that I was excited about this president was I saw that he had the potential to be a president for all Americans, and because he didn't come from a traditional governing or government background, I saw the president as somebody who would take on all different issues that would impact all different people. This is an issue that I had personal experience with, so I spent some time thinking about, well, from the White House, what can be done? And so we started doing the way that we would look at problems in business. We said, okay, let's assess the problem, let's come up with a plan to try to drive solutions, and then let's come to a vigorous execution phase. What I found is that there's a lot of people in this government who are very, very passionate about this issue and really want to drive change, and I think we've started doing that, and I think we have a lot more effort that's going to be able to come. One of the things we had to do, though, is take it to the president. Obviously, this has to be the president's initiative, or else we wouldn't be able to be working on it here. And so we gathered a bunch of experts to meet with the president and explain to him, the situation with 650,000 people leaving prison every year, how a lot of these people will become future criminals with victims, and often how the people leaving prison are more disadvantaged than when they got into prison, and it makes them more likely to commit future offenses than it is for them to have opportunities and to live a second chance once they've paid their debt to society. The president's response was really remarkable. He looked at it. One of the people in the room said to the president, they said, well, you campaigned that you were going to work for the forgotten men and women of this country, and there's nobody more forgotten or underrepresented than the people in prison. And I could see right then the president said, that's right, we got to do something about this. And since then, he's been all in to push this initiative and has really empowered his team and led his team to try and drive solutions. So we've been working in the federal level. We're working on the state level with a lot of the great governors who are here today, and with a lot of you who are really, in the field doing great work. So that's how we got here. That's why we're doing it, and we believe we can make a lot of progress.
What are some of the things that you're focused on making happen? I know that you've got a lot of activity going on. People may be just curious, what are you moving forward?
Sure. So the first thing we're doing is we're focused on the people. We're saying, how do we take as many people in this country who, for whatever reason, they committed crimes or they're in prison, and how do we help them have the best chance of living a productive life after? So the first thing we did is we spoke to a lot of the people. A lot of the people are in this room today. And what we saw is that it has to be a holistic solution, right? So if you just help somebody get a job, or if you just help somebody with addiction or whatever it is, it's a less likely of achieving the right outcome than if you do them all together. So we really want to make sure that we have all the best practices together. Another thing that the Attorney General has been a great leader on is making sure that all the programs that we're working on are evidence-based. So we're focused at the federal level, where we only have 8% of the country's inmates, but we're working on legislation in Congress now, which just got out of the Judiciary Committee, 25-5 vote, which is very, very bipartisan for this climate, which we were quite pleased with. Then we're working on the Reentry Commission, where the new director of the Bureau of Prisons, General Lynch, has been working with Attorney General Sessions to look at all the different changes they can make in the prisons. And we're also working with all the faith community and all the different advocates throughout the country to try to go into the state and local prisons. The single biggest thing that we want to do is really define what the purpose of a prison is. I think that that's undefined right now in this country. Is the purpose to punish? Is the purpose to warehouse? Or is the purpose to rehabilitate? And our view is that a lot of the people who are in prison today, they will be getting out at some point. I think it's 95+%. So we feel like we have a duty to try and help them figure out how to make themselves better, so that when they re-enter society, they have a higher probability of getting jobs and of being productive citizens than they do of committing a future crime. So that's really what we're trying to do. And there's a lot more to do, but trying to do in a short time frame.
Last question for you, and then we'll get to others. Why not do everything, though? I mean, you're doing prison reform. Some people say, why not do also criminal justice reform, sentencing reform? Why not take on the whole system? It seems like you're starting a little bit more narrowly.
So sentencing reform is something that people still have different opinions on. And what we've seen is that they've been trying to do that at the federal level for, I think, 8 years. They've been trying to do sentencing reform and prison reform. And what they've done is nothing, because they haven't been able to pass it through. And there's a lot of really great people working on it, and I'm very appreciative of the efforts that they've made, because without those efforts, we wouldn't be here today talking about this, because they've started the dialogue and the discussion. And one of the great things about our democracy and the way the system works is that you have to keep debating, and then when you can finally build consensus, that's when these things are supposed to become laws. And people say the system's broken. From the time that I've been here, I actually think the system works very well, because you have to stick with it and win the argument and figure out how to build the coalition and consensus if you really want to change the laws of the land. And that's why we have the best system in the world in America's democracy. So what I assessed just from coming into this, having not been in politics before, I looked at everything maybe with a clean slate. And my observation was that the reason why this thing was stuck was because of the sentencing reform. So we, as an administration, said, let's focus on the prison reform. If we can start showing that we can make the prisons more purposeful and more effective at lowering the recidivism rate over time, then that may help the people who are trying to make the argument for the sentencing reform and make it something that over time has the ability to go. So right now, I think that issue is still one that needs more debate, but there's very strong arguments on both sides and a lot of good arguments that people make. But right now, I think there's a big consensus around the fact that we need to reform our prisons, and if we get that done today, it will start helping people and their families today, and that's very important for us to do. So, we're not here to debate, we're here to do, and if we are able to move this forward, we will be doing things that will make our communities safer and that will impact a lot of people's lives and help their families and their communities.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much. I want to go to you. Topeka Sam is here. You've been a tremendous advocate for women behind bars. That is apparently a part of this push, trying to make things better for women. Why is that important?
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me here today. Thank you for all of you being here. Well, I first want to just lift up some of the women who are in the room, who are formerly incarcerated, who are advocates and activists, who are doing the work. So if you would either stand or just raise your hand, because I'd like you to be acknowledged, because it's a tremendous, tremendous feat every day after experiencing trauma to continue to use that trauma to change lives. Thank you. And see, we all have experienced incarceration. Myself being incarcerated in federal prison for 3 years, I went in with privilege as an educated woman, a woman of color who had 2 parents who were franchise business owners, who went to college and who made choices. And when I made those choices, I landed up with a conspiracy drug charge in federal prison. And when I did, what I saw was what happened to all the women that were impacted, not only by the systems that I even contributed to, but systems that people were put into based on poverty and race. And when we look at how we want to really change the system, we really need to start thinking about the people that are most impacted or directly affected. And those are people who are experiencing poverty in our country. Now, there are 80% of women who are incarcerated presently who are mothers. 86% of women have experienced sexual trauma, violence, or abuse, and that's just the ones that are actually reported, because everyone doesn't tell and share their stories, right? And then we think about the fact that there is 2.2 million people incarcerated, 4.6 million people who are on pretrial probation or federal supervision, and 70 million people in this country that presently have a criminal conviction. That's 1 in 3 adults. Which means that it's not only the women who stood up and myself who have a criminal conviction or have been impacted by the system, there's a lot more people in this room. And so I think that it's important for all of us to look at what we've been doing in this country. Look at what's happening to our women and our mothers. Look at the things that happened for decades to come. And we don't care about whether or not it's bipartisan, it's red and blue, it's black or white. Our people just want to be free.
Well, what happens to women in prison?
Women are victimized and traumatized over and over again. We've experienced sexual violence and abuse, and then we have to be subjected to having male guards watch us undress just because they want to. It's no threat. We have to ask for pads or tampons when that is a natural thing that we have to go through, right? And then when we have to pay for them, we have to pay for them at the same amount that we do in the street, yet their jobs are only being paid for $5.25 a month. Women who have children have to decide whether or not they're going to call their children at home or buy toothpaste. And how do you expect the children not to be impacted in a way when these things are happening? I mean, I'm a person that just gets graphic just to give details, and as a woman, myself, I had uterine fibroids, and I had to go through a myomectomy. And the fact that I had to quantify my cycle, which meant that I had to give a paper bag of soiled pads to a male guard, in order for him to see that I was actually using them so that he would issue more. And I had resources. I had family support. And you have to think of the hundreds of thousands of women who don't, and how this impacts their children. And though, yes, when you think about public safety and you think about these things, you have to think about this is safety for everyone, every single person. And there are women who will die in prison, women like Alice Johnson, who will die in prison if she doesn't receive clemency. First-time nonviolent offenders.
have heard your story many times, and I think you'd have to have a heart of stone not to be moved, and I appreciate your great work. And give her applause for her courage in trying to bring this forward. You know, it's tough. It's tough. Yeah, very, very good. Thank you. Thank you for your courage. Thank you for your courage. Jessica Jackson has said about this issue that it's a one-to-one conversion when people hear some of the things that are happening with women behind bars. Some of the stuff we could fix tomorrow, and we should, so I appreciate that. I don't know whether to call you secretary, governor, or sir, but most people don't think this is a fixable problem. Rick Perry, is this a fixable problem based on your experience in Texas?
Yeah, absolutely. And Van, thank you for being here. This isn't a Democrat or a Republican issue. This is truly a bipartisan issue. And Jared, I want to say to you and to Ivanka, thank you both for taking this on, because this may be the issue of our generation. And we're seeing places across the country. And I'm going to take it a little step further. And I think you were absolutely correct in picking that narrow victory and that narrow place to focus, so that we could put the marker in the ground with a victory, and it was a resounding one. But what I think is the next obvious step, and it's the one that I share with the president, this is real conservatism, and that is criminal justice reform, and that is being able to clearly make sure that people like you never get there, Topeka. I mean, that's the real victory. Yeah, you made some poor choices. You made a bad choice somewhere in your life, just like all of us have made. But what we were doing in the state of Texas, we were putting young people in prison for really long periods of time. Mary, you and Susanna, our neighboring states, and you all know what we were doing in the state of Texas. And it was a national issue. It started here in the White House back in the early 90s with the mandatory sentencing and the things that, by God, we're going to be hard on crime. And we were. But the result was that we were ruining a lot of lives that we didn't have to ruin. And I had a Democrat district judge come to me in the early 2000s and said, hey, Perry, how about this? And talk to me about drug courts. And we passed that in the mid-2000s. Then we had prostitution courts, and we had veterans courts, and we made a real difference. And here was the result, Van. By 2013, in a relatively short period of time, like 6-7 years, we had shut down 2 prisons and saved $3 billion in the state of Texas. But Secretary Wilkie, here's the more important thing. The lives that were saved. The lives of the people like Topeka that never went, because we gave those judges the alternatives to sending them to prison with drug rehab programs, with shock probation, with other alternatives. That's real conservatism. That's what we're about in this country. And we can do this at the federal level. States can get out there, and I know, Mary, you're looking at those kind of programs, and Susanna, you over in New Mexico, governors across the country. This is our moment as a country to send a powerful message to the least being able to help themselves in this country. And I want to finish up with this. When this all started back in the early 2000s, General, I had no idea I was going to be indicted. But I was. So this became really personal for me. And the grand jury system became really personal to me about how it's abused. Erica Dockery in Houston, Texas. People like her who basically were threatened with their children being taken away unless they didn't change their testimony, in her case against her boyfriend. This lady, March the 2nd of this year, in a civil rights case in Houston, Texas, it was clearly shown where the district attorney's office knew about the information that would have clearly shown that her boyfriend couldn't have killed that police officer because he was asleep on the couch. But it was kept away from that grand jury. It was kept away
And those types of grand jury reforms in the states, we got to be courageous to stand up and do. And Brooke and the Texas Public Policy Foundation, they were on the lead of that in Texas, and I'll promise you, Texas, we're going to be back. We're going to be back in 2019, and we're going to talk about these criminal justice reforms in the states and at the federal level, and America is going to be a better place because of what Jared and Ivanka and people like Van and Topeka and you all have worked on together. I mean, God bless you. I'm in the fight.
I'm going to add for just a minute. Woo! I want to add to our great governor, Secretary Perry. My name is Brooke Rollins, as the governor mentioned, but I'll be joining Jared and the Office of American Innovation and Ivanka at the White House in just 2 weeks' time.
Give her a
It's
round of
my
applause
great
for that.
honor.
That's a big deal. That's a big deal.
The governor told the great story of Texas, and Governor, not to correct you, but we're now at 8 prisons closed in Texas. But here's what's really, not 2, but 8. But see, this is what happens. I know. But more importantly than that, the crime rate in Texas is down 30% since we've done that. Texas's population has doubled, exploded because of our great job growth, thanks to a great leader. But as far as the prison reform system goes, we've closed down 8 prisons. We have completely changed licensing laws and probation laws. Secretary Costa, I know in Miami, you implemented the first veterans court in the country. These things all make a tremendous difference, and we are a country of second chances, and we are a country of redemption, but we're also a country about public safety, and that's the beautiful thing about what we're trying to do, what we've done in the states, but now at the federal level, what we're working to do is this will help decrease the crime rate and keep our communities safer. So that's an important point too. Thank you. Thank you all for having me here.
Well said. Well said. I'll go to you last, Jessica. You and I get a chance to work together on your Cut 50 campaign. You are a Democrat. This is not a bipartisan moment overall, but on this issue, there seems to be a little bit of a bipartisan thaw. Why do you think that Democrats should be working with Republicans on this? And what can we do to make sure that when people do come home, they come home and do well and keep this momentum going?
Well, first, thanks for having me here and giving us this opportunity. I am so excited to see this continued bipartisan effort, an improved bipartisan effort. It feels like it's gaining momentum on this issue. I think for me, it's personal why we need to come together. When I was 22, my husband was sent to prison. I found myself standing in a courtroom holding our 2-month-old daughter, who's now quite a bit
Hannah,
bigger.
right
and
there, the superstar.
introduced the vice president earlier. But at that time, you know, all I wanted was for my husband to come home. I didn't care if it was a Democrat that passed some policy or a Republican that passed some policy. And I remember once I started to learn about the system and learn how the political division was getting in the way of progress and ripping apart families across the country. All I wanted to do was see people reach across the aisle. We all know somebody who's been impacted by incarceration. Now, maybe it's your best friend, maybe it's your husband, maybe it's yourself, maybe it's the guy down the street. We all know somebody who's been impacted by incarceration. We need to focus on empowering people who have been incarcerated to come home and be a part of the solution. Help us figure out how can we actually address some of the underlying reasons people are committing crime: mental illness, drug addiction, poverty. How can we use the voices of those who have been through the system to improve it? So you say, how can we start bringing people home and make our streets safer, which should be the goal for all of us? You know, we need to start by looking at what's really broken. When somebody comes home from prison, what is their current experience? In most states, they're given $50 and a bus ticket and told, okay, good luck. I hope you do well. And this is after years of being inside of a prison where they probably are not getting the resources or the help they need to rehabilitate. So we need to start by having a real conversation about housing for people coming home from prison, about how do we get them jobs, and how can we improve their lives as they're coming home and support them in succeeding.
Very good. Well, first of all, give this panel a round of applause. I want to say a couple of things. This isn't just for show. About half the people in this room were working this morning together in real working sessions trying to figure out how to solve real problems together, and we're going to keep working together. And I just want to say, as a proud Democrat and a strong progressive, both political parties have core values. For Republicans, liberty is a core value. Limited government, individual rights. That is a core value that's being, I think, challenged now with too much incarceration. And Democrats have a value around justice and making sure the little folks don't get mistreated. That value is getting run over too. If we can't get together for liberty and justice for all, if we can't get together for liberty and justice for all, something's wrong with this country. We're going to do something on this issue. We'll fight about everything else, but on this issue, let's get together. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, I have to begin by expressing our sadness and heartbreak over the deadly shooting at Santa Fe High School in Texas just took place moments ago. We're closely monitoring the situation, and federal authorities are coordinating with local officials. This has been going on too long in our country, too many years, too many decades now. We grieve for the terrible loss of life and send our support and love to everyone affected by this absolutely horrific attack. To the students, families, teachers, and personnel at Santa Fe High, we're with you in this tragic hour, and we will be with you forever. My administration is determined to do everything in our power to protect our students, secure our schools, and to keep weapons out of the hands of those who pose a threat to themselves and to others. Everyone must work together at every level of government to keep our children safe. May God heal the injured, and may God comfort the wounded, and may God be with the victims and with the victims' families. Very sad day. Very, very sad. On another note, very positive note, I'm honored to be here today with so many leaders from across the nation who are committed to the crucial issue of prison reform. Joining us today are several members of my cabinet who are working diligently on this issue. Attorney General Sessions, Secretary Zinke, Secretary Acosta, Secretary Perry, Secretary DeVos, and Acting Secretary Wilkie, who, by the way, has done an incredible job at the VA, and I'll be informing him in a little while, he doesn't know this yet, that we're going to be putting his name up for nomination to be Secretary of the Veterans Administration. Fantastic. I'm sorry that I ruined the surprise. I'll see you anyway. We're very close to getting choice approved. And we had just approved VA accountability, which for almost 40 years they could not get approved. And now, as you know, we just had, the House just passed choice, and it's the finer level of choice. We had different levels of choice. Good, bad, okay, and really good. And I think this falls into the really good category. It's going to be a little more expensive, but that's okay. So important. So we are we have so many terrific partners working on what we're doing and the reason we're here, prison reform at the state level, including two who are with us today who have really been active, feel so strongly about it. Governor Mary Fallin and Governor Susan Martinez. You've been fantastic. Thank you. I also want to thank Van Jones, primarily because he constantly says such nice things about me. He did. Every once in a while, right? Every once in a while, he did. He actually has on occasion. Not too often, but I'll tell you what, though, it does feel good. And I also want to thank I have to say, Jared Kushner, who has worked so hard on this issue. Really has. Thank you. We're proud of you. We're proud of you. Prison reform is an issue that unites people from across the political spectrum. It's an amazing thing. Our whole nation benefits if former inmates are able to re-enter society as productive, law-abiding citizens. Every year, over 620,000 inmates, primarily from state prisons, are released after completing their sentences. For many, really, life outside of the prison is a tremendous struggle. I see it. To find a job, to stay off drugs, to avoid old habits that lead them back to a life of crime, back to prison. Unfortunately, more than 1/3 of former federal prison inmates and more than 3/4 of state prisoners will be rearrested again within 5 years. Nobody wins when former prisoners fail to adjust to life outside, or worse, end up back behind bars. We want former inmates to find a path to success so they can support their families and support their communities. Crucial to this effort is helping former prisoners find jobs. As many as 3 in 4 individuals released from prison have difficulty finding work. It is not merely a waste of money, but a waste of human capital. Some incredible people to put former inmates on public assistance instead of placing them into a steady job where they can pay taxes, contribute to their country, gain dignity and pride that comes with a career, love waking up in the morning and going to a job, making a lot more money than anything they can do, just really enjoying their life. When we talk about our national program to hire American, this must include helping millions of former inmates get back into the workforce as gainfully employed citizens. At the heart of our prison reform agenda is expanding prison work and the programs so that inmates can re-enter society with the skills to get a job. We also want more mental health services so released inmates can cope with the challenges of life on the outside, and some of those challenges are not easy. We're developing more effective drug treatment so that former prisoners can remain drug-free. Drugs are playing a tremendously big role in our lives, in so many lives, not only having to do with prisoners, but having to do with people that never thought they'd be addicted, that never thought they'd have a problem like this, that are having a really hard time coping. Drugs. We're doing a big, big job on drugs. It is a scourge in this country. In this effort, we are not just absolving prisoners of their central role in their own rehabilitation. There is no substitute for personal accountability, and there is no tolerance for those who take advantage of society's generosity to prey upon the innocent. However, if we want more prisoners to take charge of their own lives, then we should work to give them the tools to stand on their own 2 feet. They're going to love it. They're going to be great at it. By the way, I have a friend. He hired 3 people. They were prisoners, pretty hard-line people. I can tell you, 2 of the 3, he said, are unbelievably outstanding. It's been 4 or 5 years now. 1, he said, is good, but that's life, right? That's life. Some are okay. He's okay, not the greatest. But he said 2 are superstars. They would have never gotten the chance. And one of the things that we are doing is we have created a great economy. The economy is doing fantastically well, even better than you think in the stock market. And the stock market's only being held back a little bit for one reason, although it's up almost 40% since Election Day. But they're waiting to see the trade deals. And I can tell you, they're going to be great trade deals. It's going to be great for our country. Our country has been ripped off long enough, and we are making great deals. We're meeting with China today, right after this. We're going to another meeting with China. They've been taking out hundreds of billions of dollars. That's not good for people that get out of prison, and that's not good for people that have never been in prison. That's bad for our country, and we're changing it around. We're changing a lot of those horrible trade deals where they take our jobs, they take our money. We end up with no money, no taxes, no employment. Not a good combination. So the greatest thing we can do, the greatest thing I can do, aside from our programs that they're working so hard on, is create a good work environment where it's hard to get people, because then you take people that come out, you give them a chance, and then, like my friend said, they turn out to be outstanding. Jobs are so important. A great economy is so important, and that's what we have, so it makes your job that much easier. As we speak, legislation is working through Congress to reform our federal prisons. My administration strongly supports these efforts, and I urge the House and Senate to get together, and there are a lot of senators, a lot of Congress people that want to get this passed, work out their differences, get a bill to my desk. I will sign it, and it's going to be strong. It's going to be good. It's going to be what everybody wants. You're all in line, I think. You're all looking for the same thing. So we're going to have something that's going to make you very proud, really very proud. We want, like we do with Veterans Choice, we want the finest prison reform that you can have anywhere, the finest. That's very important. You make sure you both agree, okay? And Van, if we're going to go through the process, it's just as hard to go through the process and get a good bill as it is a bad bill. So let's get it right. Will you please make sure, okay? And if you see something you don't like, call me. We'll get it changed before we sign it and have to go through the whole process again, all right? We'll do that. You all know what I mean, right? Working together, we can restore the rule of law, keep dangerous criminals off our streets, and help former inmates get a second chance at life, and a second chance that many of them will really succeed at, if only given the chance. America is a nation that believes in the power of redemption. America is a nation that believes in second chances and third chances in some cases. And I don't know, I guess even fourth chances. I don't know about that. That's where I think you and I may differ. You know, we'll go 2 or 3, but maybe we will go that extra length, okay? It's a little more liberal in that way, but that's okay. But we're both well-intentioned, I can tell you that. And America is a nation that believes that the best is always yet to come. I want to, again, thank everyone here today, very special people, very important thing that we're doing. This has never been done in our country. It's never been done. We're going to give people that chance, and we're going to give people a chance at great success. A friend of mine told me that when people get out of prison, they're all excited, and then they go and they have that stigma. They can't get a job. People don't want to hire them. They can't get that chance. And when they do, in many cases, not in all cases, but in many cases, they just turn out to be outstanding, better than other people. So we're going to make our communities more secure, and we're going to make our country more prosperous. And together, we will make America safer and stronger and greater than ever before. And I can tell you, as far as people getting out of prison, it's going to be far, far, far greater than ever before. You're going to get that chance. You're going to really make everyone proud, and you're going to be proud of yourselves. So it's an honor to be with you. I want to thank everybody for working so hard on this. It's so many of the people I recognize in the room. This is literally their most important thing. We have so many different things. Economic development. This is literally, and I can speak for at least 5 or 6 of the people I see, this is literally the most important thing they work on. So it's an honor to have helped, and we're going to get something that's really going to be outstanding. It will be the best of its kind anywhere in the world. That I can promise you. It really will, okay? So God bless you all. Thank you. Thank you.